Howdy folks, Doug Majowski, Capybara Swordsman. Today we'll be looking at the first 5 simple rules of the Memorial of the Art of the Montante by Diogo Gomez de Figueiredo. Let's go swing a giant sword.
Before we dive into performing the exercises described in Figueiredo's book, we need to define some terminology and discuss the nature and purpose of the actions described in the text. As stated in my previous video, I'm working from the second edition of the Myers and Hicks translation. If you are already familiar with Figueiredo's rules, or otherwise wish to skip the discussion of fencing principles and get right to the action, I've provided timestamps in the description where I start showcasing the rules in action. Let's start with the rules themselves, or los reglas simples y reglas compostas. Rules, as described by Figueiredo, are, with one exception, a sequence of strikes, steps, and postures designed to teach Montanteros how to move their weapons and bodies, either for general practice or in specific contexts. There are 32 in total, divided into 16 simple and 16 composed rules written in 2 columns down the pages of the book. The simple rules are, naturally, the simpler of the 2. The composed rules, meanwhile, are the somewhat more complicated counterpoints to the simple rules they're paired with, the exception being Composed Rule 6, where the author gives further general advice on facing another Montantero. Rules 1 through 5 give us simple motions that, while largely divorced from a specific context, teach us to move our body and weapon in concert. Rules 6 through 16, meanwhile, give us more specific contexts and parameters that show us not just how to move our weapons, but give us insight into the martial context in which these swordsmen operated in and outside of the training hall. Most offensive actions described in the rules are cutting actions, though thrusts appear in several places. There's no mention of grappling, which, while potentially frustrating to folks coming from either a longsword or harnish-vected background, makes sense when considering the asymmetric nature of Montante combat. The cutting actions described within the rules goeth thusly. Talhos, strikes going from right to left, or dominant side to offhand side. Reveses, strikes going from left to right. There's also some destreza principles that will help your practice, such as the importance of the right angle posture of the sword, and the concepts of natural, violent, and executive movement. In simple terms, natural motions carry the blade downward, violent motion carries the blade upward, often but not always to the right angle, and executive motions which actually strike your opponent. Whichever action you're performing, you'll need to put more than just your arms into it. The majority of cuts in the rules have accompanying footwork, though exceptions to this trend appear as early as the second composed rule. You'll also want to make sure your stance is stable, regardless of what cut you're doing or what footwork accompanies it. Regarding this, Figueiredo says, quote, all the blows of the Montante have to be given such that the body is steady at the end of the natural movement, which is the one used for offense, and the means of execution. Because if the body is moved, since this weapon is used with 2 hands and thus requires you to apply a certain force because of its weight, you could dangerously fall, either for not being well and firmly planted, or by missing, due to a deflection, the object to which you directed the effect. Unquote. Also worth keeping in mind is how the weight of the Montante is going to affect your movements as compared to smaller swords like, say, longswords. If we look at how fencing works in a system like the Lichtenauer lineage, many of our actions, within and without the bind, spring forth in a way that sets us into long point. We also frequently cross our arms and wrists, and there's very little restriction, outside of those imposed by safety gear, on the kinds of postures we can employ in a dynamic fashion. And that's, not really how swinging a Montante works. If you start swinging a true two-hander the way you would a longsword, stopping a descending cut in a long point is difficult to do at speed. And if you overdo it, it can absolutely wreak havoc on our tendons and joints. So it's often better for you to let your movements broaden in a way that carries them between positions that allow for a natural deceleration with less hard stops. This doesn't mean you can't use a greatsword the way you would a longsword. You absolutely can. I do it myself as a form of conditioning. It's just better for you to use the sword in a way wherein the weight and girth of the thing work in your favor, as opposed to simply being accommodated. But enough talk. It's time to get swinging. Part 2. The Foundational 5. This first rule is one which most reveals the elegance of the Montante, and whoever performs it well will be able to perform them all. You will place your body straight with the left foot in front, the montante with the point on the ground, taken by the cross in the right hand with the thumb down, and you will tap it forward with the right foot, turning the montante to set it in place. Then you will give a talho from behind, from low to high, moving the right foot forward at the same time, and stopping with the montante in right angle in front of the face. From there you will remove the montante to give a revés, cutting from behind with the other edge of the montante, also from low to high, and at the same time moving the left foot forward and stopping also with the montante in front of the face. You will undo the rule, removing backward the left foot with a talho equal to the first, and the right foot with a revés, and take heed that the body must always turn towards where the montante cuts. At the end of this rule, while standing still, you will give a talho to the left shoulder and return the montante to again place the point on the ground as at the beginning, and all the rules having to do with the montante negro will have this ending. Now, there's a thing worth noting on my interpretation of how to carry out this rule. Let's take a look at those ending guard positions. When we launch our talho from behind, we do so with the long edge and end in the 90-degree posture in front of the face. This is simple enough, and will feel familiar to anyone used to doing an underhow and ending in the ox guard. However, stopping the blade in front of the face with the revés is trickier. I wrestled with how to do this for a while. Previously, I used to sort of fudge this cut by making it a wide action that brought the blade way off to my side, which, at least peripherally, put the sword in my field of vision. Any attempts I made to stop the sword in 90-degree posture felt weak and rough on my wrist. However, if we look back at the rule, I think Figueyredo gives us a clue as to how to get there easily while maintaining our power. The first thing he tells us to do with our sword is place the thumb on the blade in the ready position. If you remove the thumb and hold the sword in a standard handshake grip, stopping the sword in front of the face on the right is difficult. However, if you keep your thumb on the blade for the revés, it becomes a lot easier to maintain good wrist structure, and once you get used to it, edge alignment is easy to maintain as well thanks to the additional point of contact on the flat. Just make sure to keep your ears open for that telltale swish, and you'll know you got it right. Rule 2 is much like the first, only for this one we employ natural descending movements as opposed to rising cuts, and we only use our long edge. You will place the body with the left foot forward, and putting in the right foot you will give a talho, such that the montante ends with the point forward and the hands high in front of the eyes. Then, first putting in the left foot, you will give a revés, and pulling backward the same left foot you will give a talho, stopping again with the montante high, and removing the right foot you will give a revés, and a talho to the shoulder, and return the montante. Now, unlike in Rule 1, Figueyredo gives us different directions on how to chain our cuts together. Rather than stopping every cut in guard, he has us halt our talho in a raised posture with the point forward, something that feels best accomplished by letting our blade flow up and around us before it snaps into place. Then he has us put in a revés before immediately retreating with another talho, which we're told to do with no stoppage between the cuts, and only after the talho on the retreat. Rule 3 introduces us to combo attacks on the same side, which I interpret as being a mixture of the cuts from the previous 2 rules. You will place the body with the left foot forward and give a talho from behind while standing still, and another forward putting in the right foot. Then a revés from behind while standing still, and another forward putting in the left foot. You will undo the rule with a talho from behind while standing still, and another forward removing the same left foot, and then a revés from behind while standing still, and another forward removing the right foot, to end how you began the rule. My interpretation of this rule employs violent rising cuts and natural falling cuts, with the natural cuts being the executive action, and the rising cut used more as a way to clear the way for the attack that puts us in striking measure. Other people do this rule with all cuts coming from above, but I find this a little cumbersome, especially with a heavier sword, and doubly so if you're wearing a breastplate. Also, the rising cuts flowing into a descending cut help you avoid unnecessary crossing of the arms, and the use of the back edge as a potential counter to an opponent's forward guard is something that comes up again later in Rule 6. Rule 4 combines the combo attacks of Rule 2, the standing cut of Rule 3, and introduces the point as an additional offensive tool. You will place the body with the left foot forward and give a talho from behind while standing still and another forwards putting in the right foot, readying a thrust over the right arm, which you will give while standing still. Then you will put in the left foot with a revés, And removing backward this same left foot with a tall hoe, you will ready another thrust that you will give while standing still, and removing backward the right foot you will give a revez to end in the state in which you began the rule. Finally, Rule 5 gives us a thrusting posture from both sides, while introducing another way to bring the sword to the ready position after the initial kick. You will ready a thrust over the left arm, planting the body with the right foot behind, and after removing it while standing still, moving the right foot forward, you'll give a tall hoe, forming at the end of it another thrust over the right arm. Then you will put in the left foot with a revez, and while standing still, you will give another thrust readying it over the left arm, for that is where all those that originate from revezes are formed. You will exit backward with the left foot with a tall hoe, ending it with another thrust that you will give while standing still, and all those that are formed from tall hoes are readied over the right arm. And exiting with the right foot, you will give a revez to end with your body as it was at the beginning of the rule. Now, what exactly Figueyredo means by readying a thrust over the left arm took me a bit of figuring out. I used to pull the blade back onto my bicep as I do when putting it over my right arm, but I kept snarling it up on either the rings or the parrying lugs when extending forward. On this side, I tend to bring the sword a bit further out to my right to avoid hitting myself with the hilt as I extend. This only happens with particularly large hilts, as other swords I've done this rule with that have narrower rings don't have this issue. So you'll want to pay attention to how your sword behaves in this posture, and possibly make adjustments like I do if the need arises. Part 3. Putting it all together. Okay, so unpacking these first 5 rules takes a bit of reading between the lines, since Figueyredo doesn't exactly give us a whole lot of context, at least within the first simple rules. The third and fourth composed rules have a general context that I won't get into here because those things deserve their own video. However, if we take a look at these first 5 rules as a sequenced set of drills, there's an elegance in how the master starts layering principles throughout them as he gets us used to moving the sword. Whether or not these rules were laid out this way on purpose isn't exactly 100% known for sure, nor do we know if Figueyredo intended for us to look at the simple and composed rules together or in isolation. I would argue he didn't intend for us to do the simple and composed separately, but that's also a topic for another day. Regardless of whether he wanted us looking at the composed and the simple at the same time or not, it's notable that the first 5 simple rules flow together in a way that, at least to me, seems particularly suited to teaching us how to fence in a more dynamic fashion as they go on. They also slot together in a way that's easy to perform as one long sequence without stopping, which helps show how each one builds on the one that came before it. With that in mind, let's take a look back at Rule 1. Rule 1 gives us a basic combo of cuts and steps that train us to use every part of ourselves and the weapon, forward and backward, and a format in which our training is bookended by ritual motions that help literally kickstart and settle the whole thing. It also teaches us to recover to a posture between actions that is both threatening and capable of launching subsequent actions in a more or less symmetrical fashion. From there, Rule 2 teaches us how to chain multiple cuts together in a natural way, while also demonstrating how to end a natural downwards cut in a way that sets us up for an action in an opposing line. It also introduces us to the idea that you can combine flowing motion with actions that stop you in a defensive posture, akin to the cuts in Rule 1. Rule 3 teaches us how to double up on steps in a way that combines the tall hoes and revezes from the previous 2 rules. It also introduces us to the concept of attacking without stepping, and how to chain violent and natural motions together in one sequence, at least under my interpretation. Rule 4 doubles down on both the repeated cuts of Rule 3 and the recovery of a natural cut from Rule 2, while also introducing us to how to thrust. It also shows how the thrust interacts with the flowing cuts that end the second rule. Finally, Rule 5 puts everything together. It gives us symmetrical structure of matched actions on the right and left as in Rule 1, the recovery of a natural motion with the forward point of Rule 2, repeated actions beginning without a step from Rule 3, and the thrusting mechanics from Rule 4. And now for something really fun, y'all can watch me absolutely wreck my stamina doing them all in a row after roughly 2 hours of training.
Okay, folks, that about wraps up our discussion of rules 1 through 5. If you found this interesting, then I hope you'll join me in the next one, wherein Figueyredo will be giving us his answers as to how to deal with another greatsword, as well as how to lock down a wide street, and deal with the presence of rodilleros who try to ruin our fun by bringing a shield. Until then, I'm Doug Majewski, Capybara Swordsman. This is my idiot son, Judo, and I'll catch you later, Montanteros.